Turkana Market or wherever else we're going. So that's why I support this. It is extra money anyway, so that's great. But in the end, we can't lock out the 3 rural boards because they'll never win a vote on the local board vote because they're outnumbered. So that's why I'll support this. And also, I mean, I'll probably be accused, I'll probably have someone ringing me from Howick going, you voted with the mayor. Like I did when I was in New York for the LTPs, woman screaming at me down the phone that I voted with that terrible mayor. But I'm actually, that's not about it. It's about being a regional councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cashmore.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And, you know, it's fairly obvious which way I'll be voting, folks, isn't it? So, but again, I also voted to support the cycleway funding in the central city.
Yes.
And voted to support the purchase of the most expensive parkland in New Zealand, in Oraki.
Yep.
And voted to support other things that are in all other parts of this city.
Yep.
Because we all are one, we are one region. A couple of things, you know, I'd like to mention that haven't been covered yet. So Linda's talked about the playgrounds, and that's very true. Andy was dead right. Ory Point, you get 1,000 people on the motor camp in the summer and another 1,000 on the beach. 2,000 extra people. There were only 2 toilets. At least now there's 4, but it's, you know.
And a bush.
And you go
A dying bush.
every areas in the north and the south, and it's the same. Mike Giddy and his thousands of cycling friends come trundling past our roads every weekend.
And in the rain.
Now, he doesn't put any money in my letterbox either, I keep telling him to. The other area we think about is the green fields are pouring into the Rodneys, the North Henderson Massies, and to the Franklins. So Franklin's population at the moment is around 70,000 probably. It was 68 the last elections. Projections tell us it's going for somewhere, increasing by somewhere to 100 to 140,000 over the next 30 years. So to give that local board a chance to start front-loading some of that CAPEX, and it's not much, it gives them a chance to front-load a touch of it. And other things, that CAPEX drives OPEX, so that the consistency about the funding mechanism is very real. It is very real. In the other areas, you know, there aren't the regional fundings going into those rural areas to the same extent as there are in the city centre, in the more intensified areas. So regional funding, yes. Regional fairness, as best as we can make it. It's never going to be equitable, but as best as we can make it. Supporting those recreational spaces, those green outer areas, those wonderful ranges, both in the west and the south, the harbours, the beaches, definitely yes. So the recommendations is what I'll be voting for, obviously. And I'll ask that you think about what you want and what your family wants in its weekends and holidays and where you go.
Thank you. Councillor Darley.
A question first, Chair. Chair Kay just told us that some boards or board chairs had shifted position. I just wanted to get a grab on that. Some had moved from 100% population to 95.5 and others had moved other ways. Can we just get an idea of where the boards are sitting? And Chair Baker said that we have to go by resolutions. I understand that some boards have had further workshops because they couldn't convene meetings. So I need to know that position of the various boards.
Well, I think at the end of the day we have to make a decision on what we've been told and what we've got in our papers. Good question. So,
well, I'm saying that we were told something. Chair Kay had some time to run through quite a few things, but I don't know whether anybody else around this table grabbed the exact numbers, the new positions. So I'd like to know those new positions.
sorry.
Do we really
Yes,
need
please.
to do this?
Do we know that, Andrew?
Kay would. I don't know that. Yeah.
Kay, do you know who's changed the position?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. These are basically straw polls. If they had the opportunity to re-vote it in a month's time, they would change. Hibiscus Coast, Kaipatiki and Oraki were originally supporting population only, and they have moved to the deprivation of 95.5. Howick, Manurewa and Henderson, well, firstly, Manurewa tells me that they were under the impression that if they stayed with the same formula of OPEX that was previously agreed, that there would be no consultation and they would get the money quickly. If they changed the formula to CAPEX, that they would probably be lucky to see the money by the 1st of June. So they decided to actually put their funding, their original vote into land. But Howick and Henderson Massey were also slightly confused, and those three have come back to me in writing and said that they would be prepared to change their position and put it into 95.5 to try to harmonise the actual position, and they feel that is a better situation for them. If that helps. Thank you.
It does.
Thanks. And just follow up, Kay, before you go, there's the suggestion that there's no resolution. So your boards did resolve, your board, but then you were presented with new information and you reviewed your position through what, workshops? Are you confident that in your case and other boards it has been well socialised and we can rely on those new positions as being representative?
Yes, I feel that I can. From our point of view, we actually, the thing that changed a little bit for us was when we could see where the islands we felt should sit on 1% and 2%. And so when you start to overlay that formula over the other formulas, we seen that the margins closed down, and we felt that it was probably fairer to consider a factor of deprivation, because there are some areas that just need a little bit more. It wasn't as distorting as the land one. The land one is hugely distorting in that it changes something by, in Rodney's case, 228,000, and in Franklin's case, 104,000. If you put that over 10 years, you're talking $1 million for Franklin and nearly 2.3 million for Rodney over a 10-year period. So we were concerned that we were embedding a formula in place that over time would have a dramatic effect. When you're just talking a small amount of money, people will comfortably give away a $10,000 position because they know that it will just help somebody a little bit more. But that's only 100,000 over 10 years. It's quite a big difference.
Thanks, Kate. I'll be brief on this. I'm going to be supporting the Chloe Casey amendment. And Kay, as she's just finished there, has just highlighted how skewed the outcome is when you put so much weight on land. And I think all the boards have had a real willingness to try and work this out. And you've heard boards that had 100% population lockdown, and I've heard some of the feedback from my board in Devonport Takapuna. They were locked in and they wanted visitor population referenced. And of course that was never going to be an impossible thing to measure really. But I've heard boards from the east locked in at 100% and they've shifted. There's been a real willingness and generosity from many of the boards to amend their position from the formally resolved position and open up to the needs of those boards that might suffer disproportionately from deprivation or isolation. But I think we need, on land area, members, I think we need to be clear on what land area really does mean. It really means land use of land area as opposed to hectarage. And if you look at the land use, that's not actually being measured. It's to the land area, and that's where the problem lies, and that's why you get the skewed outcome. And I think the 95.5 is a very fair landing point. I can hear the chair of Oraki saying, no, it's not, but she is willing. That's my understanding. I can hear the chair of Devonport Takapuna, Joe Bergen, say, No, it's not, but he's willing, and I've checked there, and a number of chairs are saying they will bend on this in acknowledgement of the pressures some other boards have, be they physically isolated or suffering from deprivation. Just in terms of the isolation and the seasonal population. Now, I've heard that argument be brought up quite a bit, but we're not measuring seasonal population. Let's be clear on that. There's no suggestion that seasonal population is being measured here. Otherwise, in the Devonport Takapuna Local Board area, you would have to weight that significantly, just as you are possibly weighting Barrier or Rodney in terms of Matakana visitor numbers. 500,000 people go to Mangawika North Head per annum, 500,000. 1 million plus go to the historic Devonport Village. 1 million people plus walk Takapuna Beach like it's a great urban highway, probably every few months. Now, there is no account of those pressures, and those boards are not demanding that be recognised. They are backing away from that, they are making their compromises, and they are landing at 95.5. Reasonable boards, and I think it's a good landing point for all of us to go with the Clo Casey amendment.
Okay. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think in the Mayor's spirit of giving it back to local boards, I think the more the local boards have delved into this, I think that the more they have moved towards, obviously not unanimity, but quite a significant majority in favour of this 95-5 split. That was certainly my experience without knowing too much about it at the Hibiscus and Bays local board, who were discussing that last night, and I think that seems to be the trend. I guess the concern that I have is the distortion over a period of time that the land would do, and I think Kay alluded to that. So while it might not be so noticeable just, you know, in the one-off, once it's accumulates, then it does become quite a significant distortion. And I think Councillor Darby's reference to how the land is used too is very relevant. From my observation across the whole region, such as it is, I mean, the greatest areas of needs, in my view anyway, are tied to deprivation, and that deprivation is definitely a lot more numerous in the urban wards as opposed to the rural ones, although it's, you know, it's clearly in the rural ones as well. Given all that, I think, as the Mayor said, it should be really reflective of the board's view across the whole region, and I think if we take that, then they're certainly moving more towards the amendment than towards land, which seems to be decreasing, not increasing.
Thank you. Councillor Crum.
I'd just like to express my disappointment in how this is all rolled out. It seems perhaps that other of my colleagues around the table have had lots of conversations and lobbying and word from Monday's meeting. Well, I certainly haven't. No. So I've arrived at this meeting on the basis of the report that I have in front of me, and that's the information that I need to make a decision on. So as much as I agree with Councillor Darby for wanting to know more information about changes in mind from local boards, with all due respect to Kay, genuinely, it's really hard for me to take a verbal word on where boards stand, and I don't think that that's a really helpful at all way to operate. So I will be supporting the original proposal because it feels to me flying on the hoof based on, and this is a really sensitive topic. So it's, I agree with the Mayor that it would be fantastic if we could have had some real show of cohesion from the local boards on this, rather than bringing us the opposite at the very last minute. I'm quite confused as to where different local boards sit, stand, want, and are prepared to jostle or work with each other or not. So in the absence of my ability to be clear on this, I see a region-wide case for inclusion of land, and that is the way that I'll be voting.
Oh, George.
Well, no, this is quite a serious kind of situation that we've got ourselves into here, because we've heard all this kind of hearsay in relation to what the boards are saying, but, you know, it's not, we haven't had anything in writing, we've got no direct reports from the boards. We're actually relying, well, you know, we've had an updates here now, we've been told that where they were is now different. So I take it that this 95% population, 5% deprivation, takes out the 1% and 2% for Great Barrier and Waiheke respectively. Does it? Well,
It
there
retains that. You
retain-
start with your $10 million, 200,000 Waiheke, 100,000 Great Barrier, leaves you with 9.7 million. You divide that based across the boards based on the 95.5.
That even throws me into more confusion then, because, I mean, I've been sitting here trying to follow this, but if there's ever a, you know, situation that is muddled, it's this one. And I say that councillors are going to be here voting today, completely uncertain really as to, well, I'm in that situation, and, you know, I've looked at this chart, and I presume that you've done this chart, Mr Duncan, have you?
Yes.
So, you know, I think this land idea is erroneous, because I can't see the just because people choose to live and drive and live further out than other people, I don't see why that really is, if you're looking at considerations or a matrix, should really have the influence that that's being put to us, that it should have. You know, and I take that point that is made, that over the 10-year period, another 200,000, $2 million extra. So I wish we could, you know, have this more in you know, more certain and without the erroneous kind of information or the different inputs that have been made by various people as to how this should all be made up. I was going to vote for the 95% population, 5% deprivation, but you know, that obviously gives some areas, Barrier and Waiheke, considerably more than I would have thought they would be getting with based on their populations. So
1%, George.
sorry, it's very confusing, and I think, you know, like I would have liked to have really heard more and seen it in writing as to what each individual board has to say on the subject, because we're supposed to make decisions based on the knowledge of what the communities actually say. Well, at the moment, I haven't got that information, and I think this is a...
So the report has each board's all 21 boards' resolutions are appended to the report, George.
It has.
We're
Thank
told
you.
that
And yes, but, okay. Look, we've been at this for quite some time. I'm just going to make a couple of comments. Councillor Wood just made the comment that people who choose to live out in the country, we did not choose to come into Auckland. We were put there. You are talking about Rodney losing 230-odd thousand. We've got 28 communities. We are not asking for gold plating. We want footpaths. We would like places where our kids could get off the school bus and walk down a footpath instead of a dirt road. You know, we're not talking wonderful stuff here. I mean, Shale talks about cycleways, walkways. They're getting a huge cycleway over here, and good on them, and I'm pleased. You know, we're talking about stuff that's been put in the central city, which is fantastic for all of us. You know, okay, people go up to Rodney and use our areas and we need toilets for them. But we're talking about people who live there all the time, not people who go up there during the weekends. And if Shale in his area, you can't find a public toilet in one place, you walk a block down the road and you've got another one. None of my 28 little communities can you walk from one to the other. So let's just get this into perspective of what we're talking about. We're talking about 46% of Auckland's land mass, and you want to take 200,000 of us. I think that's appalling. Sorry, Madam Chair. I'm just so really pissed off at the moment. Put that on.
We're a territorial authority.
I know.
Land is important.
It is. Thank you, Councillor. Right, so we're going to put the amendment first.
The right to
Madam
speak.
Chair, I just have a question.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Walker, then
Yeah,
Councillor
I just have a
Fletcher.
question. Do we need to determine this today?
Yes.
I think you've got a number of councillors around the table here, Councillor Wood, for example, that no doubt would like to have a bit
Councillor
more
Walker,
time.
yes, we do have to determine this today because the